Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Vanissia. This is the Woolly Worker Knitting Podcast, and today I am joining you for episode 26 of the Woolly Worker Knitting Podcast. As always, it's really nice to be here. I'm quite excited again to film today because I know for a fact it's not going to be too overwhelming. There's not that many finished items or whips or acquisitions. I feel like it's just going to be quite a relaxed episode, and again I hope to be able to not make life too hard for myself when I edit afterwards and just kind of relax, take it slow. I'm also feeling a little bit brain foggy today, so yeah, I don't think it's going to be a manic episode. But yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. Filming the podcast is my favourite thing to do. I like doing the other episodes as well, but I think the podcast always feels like catching up with a friend. And it just feels really nice that there's some people out there who care about my updates on my projects. So if you're interested in watching my updates, then keep on watching. If you're a new viewer, then I hope that you enjoy this podcast and consider subscribing. If you want to find me on other social media, you can find me on Ravelry and on Instagram at thewoollyworker. You can also find me on Ko-fi or Ko-fi if you want to support me for the price of a cup of coffee, for example, or buy me a pattern from my Ravelry wishlist. It's always super appreciated. And you can also join the Woolly Worker Discord if you want to take part in a bit of a social knitting community and just chat with like-minded crafters and get to meet some new knitty friends. As always, there'll be timestamps in the description below, as well as all the information that I talk about in terms of designer, pattern names, color names, and numbers, etc. I really take the time to write every single thing out in a description because I really value that as someone who watches podcast episodes. So like I said, today there will be 3 finished objects, but 2 of them will be quite anticlimactic. This is the main one that I will then talk about in the first section. I'll talk about the 2 other finished items. I'll talk about all the whips. There's a fair amount of new cast-ons, so I'll try and not talk for too long about the old ones, especially the ones where the only progress consists of I've made more rows on it. But then I will talk about the new exciting cast-ons. It's quite a hand-dyed heavy episode, I feel, or maybe it's not. And then I'll talk about my plans and swatches. But if you have any questions about anything, if I forget to mention anything, don't hesitate to message me anywhere. Ideally Instagram, I guess, is the easiest way to reach me, and I'll be happy to answer. So let's get into it, and I'll talk about what I am wearing. I will be showing photos on screen as I speak, as I always do. I hope I don't put too many photos out. When I edit, I get a bit overexcited. Usually my boyfriend Ross takes some really good pictures, and there's always some really great ones that it's really hard for me to choose, and why choose, right? Like, why couldn't I just put 20 photos? So enjoy the 20 photos of this item as I talk about it. I started this on the day of my charity knitting live stream. This is sweater number 23 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and it's knit in Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the color Pomegranate. So this was the flagship product of my Pomegranate Cal that I hosted with Ichi of Tangerine Knits. We started together this like a pomegranate item on the charity live stream, and I had actually made a false start because I had used the recommended needle for a worsted weight yarn, which I think was 5mm. But I decided to size down to a 4.5 after the stream because I realized that the fabric was too gapey and too loose. So I'm much happier with the fabric that this provided. Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino relaxes and softens a little with block. It does transform with blocking, but it still doesn't feel as soft as, for example, their Merino or Double Sunday from Sandnes Garn. It's not itchy though. Like, I really wouldn't say it has any itch factor. It's just really dry and not soft. But I really like it. I also think that it is more breathable than, for example, Peruvian Highland wool, which I think could be said to have the same gauge. So I feel like I run really hot, and for my own body temperature regulation, I feel more comfortable wearing heavy merino than Peruvian Highland wool. I really like this yarn. I have a couple more sweater quantities, and I tried to buy it on sale where possible, but yeah, so I really wanted to make this sweater number 23 once again because I had made it pretty much a year ago in Double Sunday by Sandnes Garn, and I wore that sweater a lot, not only because the yarn was really soft next to skin, so it was just a sweater I could throw on anytime, even if I like didn't like just, yeah, I didn't have to compromise anything. I just, like, I could wear it next to skin. And then I also really liked the way that it fell on me, the drape, the drop shoulder, the ease I had. I liked. I didn't feel like it was too big that it was swallowing me, and it didn't feel skin tight either. So I really liked the fit and the construction. It was also quite a pleasant knitting experience. I think the first one I did it in 2 weeks because I just couldn't stop knitting. The shoulder construction, which I'll show some detailed shots of, is really fun. I think it was kind of my first time going into those drop shoulders where you shape the back panel by increasing slowly across, or increasing quickly across the shoulders, which creates this purposeful detail of a line of stitches. I really like that. My favorite things knitwear does this a lot. I know a lot of other designers do it too, and every time that I see it, I like it, and I definitely think it's something that would make me choose that pattern over another one in the future. So I was really happy to do this jumper again. I had never done a sweater or a garment twice, and to be fair, I still feel like I'd rather do new things. Like, life is too short to keep on doing the same pattern over and over. So I did feel a bit more bored in this one than I did previously. I also had to stop midway to film a tutorial for the neck edge, which I'll talk about in a bit. And I feel like that really put a stop in the work. So this was on the needles for longer than it should have been, but I'm happy I have it. It took ages to block, so I'm finally able to wear it, even though I finished this like over a week ago. And I can see that I will definitely get more use of this season, so it's good that I finished it just in time for the weather to slowly warm up. I'm happy with the length of the sleeves. They're nice and comfortable without being ridiculously long like my Sonia sweater from a few podcast episodes ago, which, by the way, if you were wondering, I've decided to frog, and I will show that when I do it. It's still in the naughty corner just now, so yeah, some people were wondering what happened to that. I will frog it. But yeah, the sleeves of that one are really great because they are oversized sleeves, but just the right amount. I did a lot of modifications for this sweater, so we'll talk about that now. So first of all, I did less ease than what was recommended for my size. I did the size extra small, which is the smallest, as opposed to small. And it still gave me like a fair amount of ease. As you can see, this is like my bust, and this is the ease on the sides. It doesn't feel too big. It does feel like a lot of fabric still, but I think the proportions of it are right, and it doesn't feel too big or like it's swallowing me, again, like the Sonia sweater. I feel like this is a good execution of an oversized sweater for my size, as opposed to what I had done with the Sonia sweater. So I also cropped it. It did grow back with blocking, so I'm happy with my decision of cropping it. I was hesitating between doing it the length recommended in the pattern or doing it the length of my Lakes pullover, which I take as my template sweater for a great fit. I love my Lakes pullover. So I ended up cropping it to the Lakes pullover, but it still grew more than that. And so now I've got kind of like this in-between length between the Lakes pullover and the sweater number 23 recommended length. So that's fine. You'll see in the photos how it falls on me. I think I prefer it tucked when I'm wearing it out. If I was dressing it up, I like to tuck it in like in the photos, but if I'm just chilling at home, then it's obviously nice to get that extra length that covers my sides and my midriff. Like, I'm not risking to get any cold winds of airs or anything. So I think it's a good in-between length. I always find it tricky to know exactly when to stop. Like, I never know if I should go and commit fully to the crop, or if I'm going to end with an unflattering shape of, I think for me what I don't like is like an A-line shape where, like, yeah, I don't think that makes me look good. So I try to avoid that, but it's hard to estimate, especially when sweater length change with growing and blocking. So other modifications, I did my crochet neck edge to crochet slip stitch edge, which I filmed a tutorial for. Thank you for all the lovely feedback you guys have offered and said it was helpful. I've been seeing people tag me on Instagram posts where you've been like using that on your sweaters, and it makes me so happy. It makes me feel like it was worth it to demonstrate on camera, so yay for that. And I also, I guess in coordination with that crochet slip stitch edge, I also did all of my ribbing details inside out. So I demonstrate how to do that as well in the crochet slip stitch edge tutorial video. But basically what I do is when I reach the ribbing, I I turn my work, I do a German short row, and then I start my ribbing, and then when I come back to that German short row, I resolve it by either knitting it or purling it, depending on the sequence of the ribbing that I'm at, and then just knit normally the ribbing, and then the neat side of the ribbing is what's showing outwardly, and then I just bind off with my sewn bind off while the project is still turned, so I don't turn it back or anything. And I'll show the detailed shots as well. I think that the sewn bind off looks really great from that side as well, like the wrong side. So yeah, I did that on the sleeves and on the body, and it looks really good. It does look kind of weird, like I'm not used to having ribbing that is so straight and narrow, so I don't think I'm going to be doing that for every single piece of knitting that I do. And now I know what it looks like either way, so I can make a conscious decision of what look I'm going for. Like some of them I like them to be more squishy and the ribbing to be a little bit more open. Then I'll not do my German short row turn. But for other things that maybe I don't quite want the twisted rib look, but I want something neater than normal rib, that could be a nice in-between. So then we have 3 options for ribbing. We've got normal rib, inside out rib, and twisted rib. It's nice to have options. The other thing that I did is I added some sleeve decreases. I don't know if you're going to be able to see. It really wasn't many. I did, I think, 3 sets of them. Or was it 4? It'll be on my Ravelry. And editing Vanissia will probably have put something saying whether it was 3 or 4, because I cannot stop myself from correcting myself on screen. I think the sleeves could have used more ease. They're not tight again by any means. I'm wearing a long sleeve top under this as well, so maybe that's why they feel a bit less roomy. But I think maybe I would have preferred, I guess I shouldn't have decreased, basically. Like I did the decreases because I thought I liked a bit of shaping, but I think it would have been fine without. The pattern actually includes some nice short row cap for the sleeve, which I loved doing. That's also one of the aspects that I was saying earlier was an addictive construction, because there's like more steps to follow. Feels really polished. It feels like it falls nicely in with the shoulder detail, which of course I can show you here on this. I really, really like this. My Favorite Things Knitwear, again, has a lot more sweaters that use this type of detail for the shoulder. So if you like this, definitely have a look at her catalogue. She has a few of them with textures or just stockinette like this one. What else? Last modification that I did was that I actually added some short rows at the very back, at the bottom, before the hem ribbing. So I lowered the back hem, because I liked doing that on some of my other sweaters. The Lume pullover comes to mind. The Lento that I did last year, also I lowered the back hem, mostly as a way to experiment, see if I could do it, see if I can improvise, see if it makes a difference, because sometimes I do feel like the back rides up in some of my sweaters, like the legs pullover, especially the cropped ones. I feel like my cropped sweaters just ride up, which is a bit annoying, and again, like it leaves a draft in my back. So I lowered the back hem, and you'll be able to see in a video that I'll probably put on right now. The lighting of the video is weird, so just focus on the fit of the sweater. But I think, again, it's something that maybe I should have thought twice about. Was that the look I was wanting? Like, just because I can do it, does that mean that I should do it for every sweater that I do? Probably not. So, I don't know, maybe a split hem actually would have been funner for this, and like crop it even more. When I'm looking at this sweater, I think I would have liked it a bit more cropped and with a split hem. So, that's fine. At least I know that I can do the short rows. I even put instructions on my Ravelry on how I added these short rows, but basically you put a marker on each side, you knit a little towards the front, and then you go backwards towards the other marker, and then you come towards the front as well, so it's symmetrical. Then you go back, and this time you come to less, then you come back to less, come back to less, come back to less, and then you resolve everything. That's how I did it. That was a terrible explanation. It will be in the notes. This fit is good, and I think it is quite different than my first iteration of the sweater number 23. For some reason, even though they're the same pattern. The yarn is very different, I think, is the main difference. The double Sunday is much more loose, and it hangs more. Drapey, less dense, and it's softer. And then this one feels a bit more dense and self-standing and sturdy. The color obviously is very different, so it's nice to have both in the wardrobe because they serve a different purpose. I don't know if I prefer one or the other. I really like the red color of that. I really like the fit of my first one. So yeah, it's nice to have both. The total cost for this, I like to calculate my costs as always based on the price I actually bought the yarn at, not what the price is now, and if I got a sale and stuff. So I calculated to the meter as well. So I used 7.5 balls for this, and it cost me £49.36, which is right at the limit of what I like to pay for a sweater quantity. Like, if a sweater costs me £50 or less, I'm really happy. And if it costs me more than that, then I start to really wonder whether that increase in cost was worth it and whether that shines through in the finished item, as opposed to something that would have cost me £50 or less, if that makes sense. So I think this one having cost me 50, I would say that that's worth it. And I'm happy with that price, and I'm happy that I had enough yarn. I based my yardages on my first iteration of the sweater because I knew how much yarn I had used the first time. I thought it'd be a pretty good indication of what I would use the second time. I think that the original pattern would have asked me to buy more yarn for this, so I took a risk and it paid off, which is really nice. I've really been good at not buying too many skeins of yarn for projects nowadays. I feel like I rarely end up with more than one ball extra. Usually I have less than a ball, which is perfect. So I think that's everything for this. That was a lot. I hope that that wasn't repetitive information and that maybe I motivated you to make yourself a big bright red sweater or a sweater number 23 or anything else that has that nice shoulder detail. I highly recommend it. It was really fun. Actually, one more thing, there was a mistake in the pattern at some point. The sleeve length for stockinette and for the ribbing don't match to the final sleeve length. So again, keep that in mind. I put in my description on Ravelry what I ended up doing for the sleeve length. So yeah, that was a bit annoying because I didn't know which one was right. But if you've made other sweaters, you know what sleeve lengths you like to have for your own arms. So I think that's it for that one. Let's just move on to the next one. It's a finished item. They're the Telxino socks by Sari Nordland, and they're from her book Softly Timeless Knits that I received for Christmas. I talked about this in the last episode. I think I have finished one. No, I think I was making them in tandem, so I don't think I had finished either of them. So I have now finished both of them. I don't have many photos of that, so I'll show them here. They're in a really nice color, kind of like gold rose, dusty rose, rouge. Like, I really like the clay color. I don't know, I'm gonna stop saying words now. They're cabled socks. They're DK. I used Socks Yeah by Co-op Knits in their DK base. They have the same in 4-ply. They're the tubular cast on that Sari requires, and I like the way that one works out and is constructed. She uses scrap yarn to do that. Then I did some centimeters of rib. I'm folding them here at the cuff, but you can also wear them unfolded. Then the cable pattern is both at the front and at the back, and then you have this French heel with the slip stitch flap, and then the cables continue all the way at the top, not at the bottom, and then you have the toe. So this was quite anticlimactic because I was having so much fun. They were really nice and satisfying to do. DK was working up fast. Because I had 3 skeins of yarn, I was able to do the socks in tandem because I just had like one ball of yarn attached to each, as opposed to like working from one skein of yarn and doing the sock that way. I don't like to do that. So I was doing them both at the same time, and I was having so much fun. I love the color, I love the cables, I love the pattern, Sari Nordland, blah blah blah. You get the message. But then I finished them, and they were fine, so they fit great. Then I blocked them, and for some reason they grew so much to the point where I was wondering if it was something with the yarn, that it was like superwash or something. So I went on Ravelry and I looked at the comments to see if anybody had complaints about like, oh, this changed a huge amount with blocking. But nobody said that. One person even said the opposite, where it was like, this didn't change at all with blocking, and I was like, that's crazy. When they were wet, it was even more apparent. They were on the sock blocker, and they were genuinely like hanging off the plastic sock blocker. When they completely dried, they shrunk a little bit more. so it wasn't that ridiculous. Like I really felt like I had clown feet. So I tried them on today, and if I shuffle them about, if I readjust and everything, then I can walk in them. Like they don't feel like they're gonna make me trip. I feel like if I were to adjust, I would probably maybe remove properly a good centimeter, or maybe two, like maybe 1.5 centimeters. I don't know, like 5-6 rows. And so the backstory is that these are going to be for a competition, a knitting competition for like farmers show that happens in Edinburgh in June. I was going to enter them, so I've already woven the ends in. I've tried to be as neat as possible, and I was kind of thinking I wasn't going to wear them anyway before the show because I want them to be as perfect as possible, and I really don't trust my weaving in the ends competencies to be judged in a favorable way by external judges. So I don't want to cut or undo this and redo it. I kind of just want them to be judged like this for the show, and then once I get them back from the show in June, I could undo the graft that I did and remove some rows and then re-knit them, which I'm strongly leaning towards doing because I really wasn't going to wear them anyway, so it doesn't matter that I fix it now. The judges don't know my foot size, they don't know that these don't fit me well, so I think that's what I'm going to do. But I was a little sad because I was really enjoying the pattern. I was really wanting the satisfaction of a project that looks great at the end, and they do look great, but I just know that they're too big, which I don't know why it bothered me so much, but it did. And it kind of made me wary of that yarn then, if I had such a surprised experience. But I guess now that I know that, and I don't know, maybe take this as a warning for yourself, I'll hopefully not make the same mistake again, and maybe err on the side of making them smaller as opposed to larger when it comes to like stopping for the toe. So yeah, that's kind of the mixed feelings on these. This cost £13.65. I bought the yarn on sale at Wool Warehouse, and I used 2.5 balls pretty much, I think. I think there's nothing else to say about these. So yeah, let's move on to the third item that I finished, which is the Winter Clutch by Petite Knit. I showed this as like the very bottom of the bag last time, and unsurprisingly it was quite fast to finish, so here it is now. Now I really have no idea whether it is meant to be this big. I was so shocked as it was growing on the needles and as it blocked out. This is without the wire, so maybe when the wire comes in it'll really cinch it in and make it look smaller and more portable, but this feels like a proper like pouch, like Santa pouch. I could shove gifts in there. This is a DK yarn. I used a hand-dyed yarn from Nervous Fiber in BFL. No, it's in Devonia by John Arben, but she hand dyes that base. But the base is Devonia. I really like this. It's really rustic. I was going to do a hat at first, but I thought it might be a bit itchy on my forehead, so I'm glad I went for a bag. So here's a tip: if you have a hat quantity of hand dyed, you could make a bag with that same quantity. You can definitely make that one. I was playing yarn chicken, to be honest. At first I had less than what the pattern supposedly called for, but I know that my gauge is loose in general, so I can get like, I need to do less rows to attain the correct measurement, so I save on yarn that way usually. I ended up making 8 repetitions of the 8 round repeat, I think. It's a really nice construction. You start off at the bottom, you make it go in both directions with the stitch pattern that you're working flat. Then you pick up stitches around to then work in the round, and now you're doing the stitch pattern in the round for a long time until you reach the desired length, and then you do a little bit of a stockinette edge, which is rolling right now, but then that stockinette edge will be sewn in onto the wire that I've ordered. I wanted specifically to not order from Petite Knit for all the accessories. I wanted to see if I could find my own. So when you buy it from Petite Knit, you can buy the cotton lining. There's a wire for the clutch aspect, then there's 2 rings, and then there's a chain. So I ordered all of these separately on Etsy. I don't want to recommend that just yet because I don't know what the quality of it is going to be, and it will take a while to arrive as well, sadly. So this will not be a finished item for like some time, but which is frustrating because I wanted to have it done. So this will sit for a while unused. But I will definitely update you all when I receive the items to finish this pouch. And I'm really looking forward to having a knitted pouch that I can say I've made and bring that to like our dates and our city trips, and it'll definitely have enough space to fill, like to get my phone, my purse, sunglasses, a charger, like all that good stuff. The other thing I was going to mention is that somebody has recommended putting some cardboard perhaps at the bottom or some like facing, because it is definitely very floppy, and if I had a phone in there it probably would like sag. So I might put some cardboard or a cushion or some kind of like flat surface to make this be a bit more rectangular. But I really enjoyed doing the pattern. It was definitely a nice palette cleanser, super fun for hand-dyed. I mean, I talked about this last time, but how great does this work? I can see here on the camera, it's not as bad in person. There's a bit of pooling here, but it's not noticeable because of the shape of it. Like, it's just really... It was really enjoyable to see all the color variations without worrying of like, oh, what is this going to look like on my body? It wasn't going to be on my body. So you have like free reign. And yeah, if you have one skein of hand-dyed DK, I highly recommend this pattern. And I can't wait to finish this. But I guess I'll talk about this a bit more then when I finish it. And hopefully maybe I wear it a bit in town and tell you if it was a practical item. But yeah, if you've made this clutch, let me know if you also thought that it was really big. The total cost for that one was £15.20. I think I used 95 grams. I bought my hand-dyed yarn on sale from Nervous Fibre one day, so it was a really economical project. The little accessories, hopefully, well, they didn't cost as much as the petite knit ones would have, but still was a bit of added expenses to get the chain and get the wire. So the next category then will be my works in progress. I'll start with something that you've seen before. This is my Louder vest by Rebecca Clow. This is a test knit. Last time I showed it, I had just joined under the arms. So since then I've made all the ribbing details and I've continued on the body. So I will show you what this looks like now. I really like this color. This is pretty accurate on camera from what I can see. It's like a very interesting medium to dark grey brown with a tiny bit of a blue hue and tone to it. It is really nice and it's hard to describe. I've made a modification to do all my ribbings twisted with Rebecca's permission. I also made a modification to mirror the cables. If you can see, they're going away from the V is what I was trying to go for. I think I succeeded. I think it looks really good. Like, this pattern is so cleverly designed and has been thought through to really get you the best homogeneous look, and the cables are going in the right direction. I'm really happy with my modification of having switched the cable, so I recommend you do it too. Then at the back you can see there's that really nice little shoulder detail that is so beautiful with the cable. So yeah, my top 2 favorite things about this is that shoulder cable here and then that v-neck cable here. The pattern is going to come as a mega pattern with a sweater, cardigan and vest, crewneck, v-neck options for all. So I recommend you do the v-neck because then you get that nice little cabled meeting in the middle. I'm happy with the armholes and the V. I think that they're a great ratio of picking up stitches and also a great length where it doesn't feel out of proportion. I think the proportions are great for that. I did twisted rib and then I didn't do any setup rounds, and then I did sewn bind off, being very wary of the tension of my sewn bind off for things like that, because you don't want them to like flare out and stick out of your v-neck. You want them to be flush with your skin. So I try to really take my time doing that bind off as opposed to rushing it to get it done. And then I've since made a bit more progress, although not that much. It is a bit slow going. I do the cable row, do some resting rows, do one cable row again, and it's like, oh, it's not growing. So I'm trying to do some repeats a day to see it grow day by day, as opposed to like really focusing my attention on it. But it'll be very easy to decide when I want to be done with it. I'm gonna probably go for what the length states, although I might crop it a little bit. I'm thinking of wearing this over t-shirts. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to want to tuck it in necessarily. I probably just want to sit where it's going to sit. I'm hoping that it will block out a little bit. This definitely has a lot of negative ease at the moment, although it does fit and it doesn't feel ridiculous or like I'm squeezed into it. It just would probably be a bit more comfortable if it was more relaxed. And I think I want the cables anyway to open up to show a bit more definition. The yarn I would highly recommend for this type of stitch pattern. The cables are popping out nicely, the twisted rib looks really great, it meets the gauge. I use the same size recommended as Rebecca, like the needle size, because we have the same gauge usually. Although there were a little bit of issues when we were test knitting the pattern surrounding the kind of like v-neck depth and armhole depth, because it depends on you matching the designer's gauge. But I think Rebecca is going to do some stuff around making it clear what your options are if your row gauge isn't the same. You can either not have the same v-neck depth as her, and either it being shallower or deeper, or you could adjust your increases to make sure that you end up at the point you're supposed to end up lengthwise. So yeah, nothing else to say about that, I think, because I talked about the kind of like yoke construction in my previous episode. So this was really more about like the ribbings that I've done and the fact that I've tried it on and it fits in a pleasant way. Yeah, I really like as well how the ribbing looks next to the picked up cables. Like, you know, it just looks really neat and professional and polished and clean. Like, this is really clean. The v-neck also has that nice center decrease. That also looks really good. I'll do, not even an update, but if you remember last time I showed you what I was working on was a colorwork cowl by Mary Wallen, and I showed you where I was. I have not done a single row on this project since last week. As I predicted, once I've done one full repeat, I usually just don't want to do it again because it's boring, because I already know what's going to happen. So yeah, I really need to get this back on in the works. I need to finish this because I have another colorwork project I want to do, but more on that later. So I'm showing this on the podcast for accountability reasons. When you see this on Monday, please comment and tell me to finish this. If you have any tips on how to motivate myself, or I've already woven in the ends though, so that's good. I wanted to do that too. But if you have any ideas on how to make this a bit more interesting for myself, or maybe if I should do like a certain amount of rows a day as well on this one. I don't want all my projects to do a certain amount of rows every day, because then none of them are going to get done. Like, they're all going to be super slow. But yeah, not done anything on that. However, we had a spontaneous cast on last week. My friend Jo from the Designs Made by Jo podcast on YouTube and on Instagram. She's from Fife here in Scotland, and she had the lovely idea to celebrate Scottish Spring and the Woolly Good Gathering kind of as an end game. So she made a knit along or a make along called the Scottish Spring Mal on Instagram. It's a hashtag you can follow and use. So I think the rules are just to use any yarn from a Scottish dyer or a Scottish producer, so like small business. And I thought, what a great opportunity to use the yarn that I've bought from those producers or dyers over the years and support my friend Jo in participating in her event. There's a little group chat on Instagram that you can join too. And we're all just so excited about like the nice yarns that we already own, and it's about using that. So I've decided to cast on some yarn I bought from Giddy Yarns last year. I showed it on the podcast. I think I had talked about it on the podcast as like something that I had seen and wanted to buy. And as I was recalling it on the podcast, I motivated myself to then buy it and like just do it. And then I bought it and showed it off in the next episode. This is hand-dyed yarn that is inspired by my favorite book, Misery, from Stephen King. And yeah, it's kind of this like wintry colors with little specks of red, blood red, if you know Stephen King, in it. So it's like this wintry landscape with blood. And yeah, I really liked it. I bought 2 skeins. I think at the time I probably knew I was going to make a lento. So here's what I've done. I've cast on a lento. I also didn't want to use a fluff as my second strand. I wanted to experiment because I've seen tons of people use just another fingering weight. again, because I want to see what else is there apart from mohair in life, and when you're losing the fluff, does it really matter? Are the spots that the mohair usually fills in, are they too visible with another fingering? If I use an alpaca, what properties is that going to have? So long story short, I used Alpaca 2 by Isayer, not the Alpaca 1, which is a lace weight. This is a fingering weight, which is 50-50 wool alpaca. And you might be able to already notice, but the first thing that I probably should have cared more about, I just bought this as like the natural white, but as you can see, it is kind of like yellowish natural white, and this one is much more like a bright bleached white as a base. I wondered how these were going to marl in the fabric. I also wondered whether the gauge was going to be met. I decided not to use the 6mm needles preconized in the pattern and use a 5.5, which I did in my previous lento. I cast on for size 1, and then I was realizing after finishing the raglan increases that maybe it was too small. So I blocked it mid-project to see if I met gauge blocked. Realized I was not on gauge, it was too tight, so it would end up too small. So I then continued increasing for the size 2. So this is my way of saying that I am following instructions for size 2, I guess. So as you know, the lento is quite a fast growing project. And here I've got my yoke and I'm working on the body, and yeah, this is really great. First time holding it up on the podcast. I don't think it's coming out too yellow then. I think in my artificial light in my bedroom at night, which my light is yellow, it looks really bad. But in natural light, this looks like pure white. So yeah, it's not too much of a catastrophe that I didn't use matching marling yarns. It's really soft and squishy. I love the squishy fabric that is coming from this loose gauge. It is not see-through. I love the fact that the hand-dyed speckles and colors are more diffused and less harsh than if I, had held this as a DK or as a fingering. What I'm trying to say is that holding it with another white is kind of toning down the hand-dyedness of it. I don't know if you know what I mean. It just feels like a bit more subdued and subtle. It's not like the most subtle, but I just feel like it's, for example, less dangerous as well in terms of different skeins, which is why I'm not alternating. I'll probably fade the second one in as I use it, but I still have a lot to go on with this first one. So maybe this will just tide me over for the body, and then I'll use the second skein I own to make the 2 sleeves, and that'll be it. My plans for this in terms of modifications and lengths, etc., I don't know. Again, it's such an open possibilities project. I purposefully didn't cast on at the color like it's asked for. I cast on at the neckline because I was maybe going to want to do an I-cord and then do I-cords everywhere. I was feeling quite adventurous in terms of that. But then I also wondered whether I could just do, I feel like the yarn is going to last me forever, so I was thinking of maybe just doing rib, maybe not a double folded, but just a normal rib, and then do normal rib and try and do full length sleeves, and then crop the body a bit, so just try and stretch that yarn out as much as I can. Or I could also do a split hem on this one, like I wanted to do on this one. Or I could also do, yeah, I was wondering of whether I was going to use this as a sweater I wear over dresses, or is it a sweater I wear over trousers? So once I make that decision and that commitment, I think I'll then categorize that in my head as that's a garment I will wear with such and such, hence the length on it, or hence the finishings on it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed working on this. I didn't know I was going to cast on 2 weeks ago, and then when Joe announced that make-along, I was like, yeah, there we go, perfect occasion to use my hand-dyed, support a Scottish hand dyer, Giddy Yarns. Really liking her yarn so far, and the way it's working up. As you can see, there's no pooling or weird variation, and I'm just enjoying it. This has been my mindless TV knitting. Like I said, I just need to figure out the modifications that I want, or the length that I want to do, and the necklines I want to do, and ribbing. And once I figure that out, commit to it, not overthink it, and just do it. So yeah, this has been a joy. The needles were a little bit painful on my fingers at first. They're not the biggest, but they're quite big for me. So it wasn't the most enjoyable on some of the circumferences that I was doing, like at the beginning when all the stitches were all scrunched up. But now that I'm on the body and the circumference of the needle is like appropriate for the amount of stitches that I have on it, it doesn't feel uncomfortable to knit on this. However, because I'm holding the yarn double, there's obviously 2 strands on the needles for each stitch, and it'd be very easy to have them slip or for me to miss them when I'm knitting, so I can't really do this without watching. The next project that I want to talk about, you've seen before, it is my Urania cardigan by Sari Nordland. Actually, a lot has happened since because I blocked it. So I was halfway through a sleeve, I think last time I showed you. I finished that sleeve pretty fast. It was a lot of decreases, which is quite addictive because you're like, maybe I'll get 3 of the decreases, then maybe 6, then 9. Like, it's, yeah, a nice thing to kind of tick off your list. Then there's a bunch of knitting to still be done without any decreases. I added 4 or 5 centimeters to the sleeve because the sleeve length that was preconized in the pattern seemed way too small. I really wondered why. And looking at the pattern, it doesn't seem that it's that small, but the model is wearing a shirt, so maybe that also skews your perception. I decided to go with my gut and lengthen the sleeve, then do the recommended amount of ribbing that the pattern called for, just 1 by 1 rib. Then I didn't bind off, I put it on hold, blocked the entire cardigan because it is a drop, well, it's not a drop shoulder construction, but it looks like a drop shoulder, so you know that that point where the sleeve starts, that point might vary with block. It might drop even lower, hence making your sleeve even longer. So I was kind of wondering whether I had done well by adding those 5 centimeters. I blocked it, which took ages because this was still on the blocking mats, and my flat just does not dry quickly, so I was really eager to work on those things, but they were just like taking so long. Like the lento was blocking for a while, like I was blocking so many things this week even though I hadn't finished anything. So anyway, I blocked it and I let it dry for ages. Then I tried it on and I realized that it had grown a bit, but not significantly so that it was justified that Sari had said to do it for 5 centimeters less than what I had done. So I was happy that I added the length because it would have been required. However, it was maybe like 1 centimeter too long, so I then removed a couple of rows of my ribbing. I didn't want to undo all the ribbing and undo the stockinette, so I just removed a bit of the ribbing. She called for like 6 centimeters, mine is now 5, which is fine. I don't think it's going to throw off the whole balance of the garment. So let me show you then what this looks like. Again, this is kind of a weird stage to show, but I hope it works. The yarn has behaved really nicely with blocking. It's really drapey and even softer than before. I'm using Knitting for Olive Merino in Blue Tits and Camaro's Midnight Soul in Midnight Blue, which is way softer than mohair. It's giving that gorgeous night sky fabric color. And as you can see, the sleeve is an appropriate length. So yeah, I'm working this on wooden needles 4mm, which is what the pattern calls for, and I'm doing size 2, I think. Yeah, I'm doing size 2. So yeah, I'm happy that I took the time to actually block the cardigan to see whether the sleeve was going to be too long. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that like it was justified to have added those centimeters. Sleeve is really, really nicely shaped. As you can see, lots of decreases. But yeah, isn't that cardigan just like the cutest, most gorgeous thing? I tried it on then to see if the sleeve fit. And I really liked that neckline and the panels here. I think it looks great with the subtle cable that borders it. Like that's kind of the only detail of this cardigan, apart from the fun shoulder construction, which I go into in my last podcast episode. But the only detail is really just the cable. So I've just got the stitches to make the second sleeve, and I've been working on that today. So I've made a couple of decreases already. I'm probably going to be able to finish this sleeve during the weekend if I just focus on that, which I kind of want to because it is very mindless, and because I've done the first one, I know exactly what to do for the second one. So I'm eager to finish this second sleeve so that I can go back to doing the body of the cardigan, which again will be flat and has cables. I'm still wanting to just make an I-cord to finish this as opposed to a button band. And I think that's it. I like, it was mostly that whole sleeve, the back hole around adding length or not, that I wanted to bring your attention to. There was another pattern from Sari, the Levi pullover I was wearing last week or last podcast, that I had to remove 5 centimeters of the sleeve. So I don't really know if she's changing the grading chart that she uses, but also that one I had done the 3rd size, so maybe it's different based on the sizes. I don't really know why the sleeve length that Sari asks for changes so much depending on the patterns. Is that something that you've noticed if you've made any of her patterns, or have you ever had to adjust quite so strongly a pattern sleeve length? But yeah, I think the main thing again that I want to talk about is the fact that when I blocked it for measuring the sleeve, I was just so pleasantly surprised at how soft and smooth and drapey and beautiful the fabric has transformed into. It's catching a bit of the fluff here. I'm still feeling like maybe the color matching isn't that great between the two colors. The blue tit is quite vibrant, and then the midnight blue is a little bit more muted. It looks great on camera, but in person it's looking a little bit dusty, I would say. But that's okay. Live and learn. I think I'll stop talking about this because I don't have any more information to offer, and this is attached to like so many balls of yarn, it's stressing me out. Okay, the next project you also have not seen before, and it is also a hand-dyed project. So I'm quite excited about this one. I don't really know what spurred me on to doing that. I think I was just wanting to use my hand-dyed, but that was before I cast on the Lento. So it is the Dare Duomo sweater by Sungi Knits. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She's got that sweater, which was really, really popular on Instagram when it came out and ever since. And she's got the Doppio sweater recently, which is a raglan, which people are also loving, especially for hand-dyed. I think when you think of hand-dyed or that sweater, you think of the other. I'm making mine with Jing Fiber Cashmere Merino Nylon Sock base, which is really lovely. And then I'm doing it with Fiber Space Cumulus, which is Surrey Alpaca base. Like, it's not even drops brushed alpaca, it is Surrey alpaca. It feels exactly like the hand-dyed yarns that I buy, like the same base. So I really, really love this base. I hope more commercial yarn companies come up with it, or I hope that Fiberspace enlarges their color selection so that I can just buy this all the time from now on. I highly recommend this as a mohair substitute if you need one. Same as the Midnight Sole. This one feels even softer than Midnight Sole. A little bit more fluffy and thicker, so maybe not the most appropriate if you're going to do lace or cables. It might hinder it a lot, but for stockinette, this is lovely. The Jing Fiber I'll show here is this beautiful, slightly tonal, slightly variegated lilac purple. I'll show some photos of what it looks like. And then here's the sweater that I can show you so far. Ta-da! So as you can see, it is bottom up. This is my first bottom up construction ever. Well, for a sweater, I guess. I've made a tank top bottom up. So it is an interesting feeling. I had just finished this red sweater, which was finished by 10 centimeters of ribbing, and then I had to cast this on, which was also around 10 centimeters of ribbing. So I was like, oh my god, can I just get to the stockinette already? The recommended cast on, I think, is a cable rib cast on, but I decided to do tubular because I really like how that looks. I use Andrea Maury's tutorials for that, which I really, really like, and it works for me. She has a really nice way of explaining it and demonstrating it, and she demonstrates both English style and continental. There are so many details in this sweater. I don't even know if I should say all of them, but just know that every single step the designer thinks of a way to make it better or more polished or neater. It really seems like every detail has been thought through and no decision has been made randomly. And sometimes she even explains to you why she made those decisions, in case you were curious, or if you thought, maybe I'll substitute this for this. But then she says, but this is why I chose this. And you're like, oh, then you know best. There's some waist shaping, so increases because you're going up. There's a faux seam, which you can then later sew together, which I will do. I've done a faux seam before with a pearl stitch, but I've never actually sewn it together afterwards, which is a step that you can do. There seems to be a lot of instructions in the pattern, like detailed tutorials on how to do things. The instructions are really great. The numbers are all correct. There was an update recently, actually, which said that some of the numbers had been corrected, so I'm fairly confident to say now, as of today, the numbers are all correct. I mean, I don't know, I really like the yarn on this so far. Obviously, because I haven't done much of the sweater construction, I can't speak for that. It'll be a drop shoulder, and I'm planning to do the slanted bind off for the shaping, and then sewing the two shoulders together. There's another option where you do a 3 needle bind off to join the front and the back. I'm planning to like cast off and then seam it, because I'm basically trying to embrace the fact that the seams are here to add durability, and because all of my other sweaters are seamless and in the round, etc. I think it'll be really fun to have something different, and also to just expand my skills and maybe get better at seaming so that I don't dread doing it. But so, like I say, I'm not quite there yet, so all I can speak about so far is just how lovely this color is, and I really like it. Looks weird on the red right now, I can see, but I feel like how beautiful is this gonna look when it's all over. And I'm also having a lot of faith in the consistency of the hand-dyed skeins of the purple. I'm also not planning to alternate. I might again fade it in when I reach a new skein. I bought 3 skeins of this. I'm making size 2 because I had swatched with the recommended needles, I think, or even one size down already. She recommends 4.5. I ended up using 3.75 for the main body. I'm using the same that is recommended for the ribbing though, as the pattern recommends. She says even if you go down needles, use the same for the ribbing. Yeah, I thought I wanted again not to have something that had too much positive ease, and if I have leftovers of this beautiful yarn combo in the future, I'll be sure to make some kind of mittens or a hat or a little scarf. Like this would look, this is just like my favorite yarn combination of the year so far. I'm so happy with my choice to pair a lilac fluffy strand to really highlight the lilac tones in this one, and I think it's coming across really well. I don't know why I'm holding this up so high. I just want you to see, and I want me to see when I'm editing. I think that's it for that. Let me just read my notes. But yeah, it's been a joyous project that I like having on my desk, I like looking at, I like looking forward to, and I can't wait to tell you more about it when I reach other steps. Okay, the last thing that I will really briefly talk about, because it's crochet. I don't think many people want to hear a lot of details about, but I kind of want to show the progress because it is something that will probably change a lot as it grows. But it is my Lily backpack from, who is it from? Natalia Kononova from Outstanding Crochet. So I showed this last time. I was really proud to have finished the bottom of the bag, which was all in that beige color. I had measured it since, and the designer tells you what the panel should measure, and mine was definitely already like bigger than what was meant to be. I used the recommended crochet, which is 2.75. I probably should have done 2.5, but it doesn't really matter as long as you make your lining afterwards match the dimensions of your project. But again, all that to say that I'm turning out with something that seems massive. So here it is. Oh my god, look at that! That is so cool! So I'm holding it upside down so you can kind of see like the shape of it. You've got that like oval, and then you just got like the motif coming out from it, but that's so pretty. It's so graphic and striking. So here it is like the right way up. You've got some like flowers at the bottom, and then you'll have like other motifs popping out afterwards. I don't know if it is as big as I was making it out to be in my head, but I feel like it is quite large, but it's a backpack, so yeah, that'll be good. Oh, I can't stop looking at this. I'm sorry if this is cringy, but this is amazing. it looks so different when you're holding it up like that on camera than it does when you're so close to it working on it. I'll show you a bit of a close-up if you want. This is mosaic crochet, but it's not your everyday average mosaic crochet. Mosaic crochet, if you don't know, is kind of like you do a lot of single crochet stitches, and then if you have to go down, you do a double crochet stitch in the row below, and that's what makes the motif. So you're only ever working with one color every row. But in Natalia's patterns, a lot of them, she uses a lot of different stitches to make maybe some kind of like curved lines or waves, or like some decreases, increases. There's some front post half double crochets. Like, she really uses a bunch of different stitches to play around with texture, and it just makes it much more interesting to do and to look at. So I really appreciate that, as like the process of it is really made much more interesting due to that variety of stitches as opposed to just single crochet and double crochet. So I'll show you the flower, for example, and you can maybe see up close what I'm saying with my tension being a bit loose and maybe see through. I hope that the fabric will be dense enough for what I need in a backpack. There will be some lining, maybe even quilted if I can figure out how to do that. You can see this kind of like mosaic motif at the bottom. That was quite fun to do while you're setting up the stem of the flowers. Then you've got the leaves, you got another motif emerging between the flowers, and this is motivating me so much to keep going. Like, this is so stunning. I'm a flower. After the flower is done in that dark pink, I'm going to change colors up a little bit and use the white in combination with the light pink, for example, or the beige. I'm totally stealing the color palette of another Ravelry user, which I'll put their name here on screen. All the props to them for coming up with this beautiful variation on the pattern. The pattern uses like a single color as the contrast, and then the main color is this self-gradient yarn, which then does all the work for you for the color variation. But I really like this way of having color blocks in that project from that Ravelry user. So she generously provided those kind of like photos and measurement. Like, she provided instructions on how she used those colors, so I thought it was fair game that I could use that too for my one. But yeah, I think that's it. I wanted to show it off. I'm also I was planning to do that as my entry for that yarn show competition I was talking to you about. The entry is a crochet bag for summer, which I thought this worked perfectly. But because I'm intending to line this and everything, I don't know if this would still count as an entry for a competition. If the theme is crochet, can you do finishings in not crochet? So either I'll find someone to message about that, or I'll just enter a different crochet bag, like a tote bag or something. Because I think that this wouldn't shine as much if it didn't have the finishings. So yeah, no, this is fantastic, and I really need to read the charts on this one. Another thing I wanted to say actually is there's charts and there's written instructions. I'm absolutely 100% following the written instructions. The chart is so overwhelming. If you know crochet, you know what a chart for crochet looks like, and it is like a different language. It's so difficult, and if you understand them, you're like on another level, and I admire you. So I'm sticking to the written instructions, and they're really well written as well, because again, when there's instructions about like you need to make 5 double crochets, she sometimes tells you the first one of which should be in the double crochet 2 together from the row below. So because she has those little extra instructions of where the stitch should fall, like the first or the last one or something, that keeps you on track to make sure that you're not reaching the end of the row and realizing that you've been placing your stitches incorrectly and you end up with too many or too little stitches, or things are misaligned. She kind of keeps you on track with those little checkpoints periodically where it's like, at this point, this should be above that one. And so if it is, that's great. And if it's not, then you can go and correct and change course. So I love that about this pattern. I've not made a single mistake. Everything has been aligning perfectly so far. And it is more intuitive than you would think. Like, there's a certain amount of repetitions you have to do per row, and by the first one you're like, oh my god, I'm never going to remember what the pattern is. But then by the time you're reaching like the middle of the bag, you know what you're doing and you know where the stitches should end up, so you don't actually have to to go back and look at your screen every 2 seconds. Like, you have to pay a lot of attention at the beginning of the round, but then by the end of the round you're in a rhythm. Then you have to start a new round, so you have to remember a new thing. But it is nice to get into a rhythm of it, and the progress is really nice to just see it build, like, line by line. And yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I hope I can do the finishings for this project that it deserves, so that it can shine, and I'm looking forward to showing you guys what that looks like. So I think that's it for that. I will now talk about my future plans and swatches, which will then replace the acquisition section. I'm trying to move away from that a little bit. But the next thing I'm really excited to talk about, and is in relation to the cowl I was saying earlier. I've been chosen for a new test knit for Mary Wallen, which is so exciting, a huge honor. It's a pattern that she's designed for John Arbon, their annual sort of pattern collection roundup magazine collective. So I don't know if I can show a lot. I know someone has asked, so I'll know later if I can show you works in progress. But here's the kind of like doodle that was shown to us to see if we wanted to apply. So I was like, I love that. I need more cowls. I love Mary Wallen. I have a lot of stash yarn, and I also wouldn't mind buying her yarns anyway. But it has 14 colors, and her yarn is like quite expensive. So I moved away from the idea of buying the British breeds, but I know I want to in the future. After seeing that doodle and after receiving the kind of brief and the prompt, we don't have the pattern yet, but we have kind of like the yarn requirements. And so they showed the 14 colors of Mary Wallen's yarn, British breeds. And I thought it would be a really fun challenge to see if I could make that from stash. So I spent so much time, firstly, not even from stash, but just wondering if I could find a substitute for each colour of the British breed, find the Jamisons of Shetland, Spindrift, 4-ply substitute. I was trying to just match them like for like, which proved to be quite difficult. Like, a lot of the colours, even though Jamison's has like 200 colours, and Mary has like, I don't know, like 30, it was really hard to find the exact shade in terms of like heathering, marling, tone, shade, tint, like all of those, ways to describe a color. It was really hard to find substitutes. Then I kind of moved away from that idea and instead decided to like just kind of base myself on contrast mostly, and if I could find something that was the same contrast for the pattern, then it would work and be harmonious and balanced. I was really learning a lot in this experiment about how to pick colors for Fair Isle. And I think obviously doing a swatch would be even better. I probably won't, since it's a cowl and I can just start doing a little bit and realizing if it works or not, and if it doesn't I can rip it out. But here's what I've got so far then for my color pairings. I'll try and show you this without everything falling out. Yeah, so here's what I've got, and I placed every pair next to each other. So we've got those two are going to be paired. This is the light color and then the dark color. And then we've got those two greens. There's this turquoise and this dark green. I don't know if you can see the dark green or if it's too dark. Then a blue and a light blue. Yellow and orange. Pink and red. And then dark brown and light brown. So when you look at that, I think it's a pretty cohesive color palette. I'm really proud that I picked all of this completely by myself. Didn't use anyone's project on Ravelry because there's none. Didn't use any pairings from any other, like, this is all from my brain, and I'm really proud of that. I think it's gonna work. I'm really so excited to cast this on, especially because I came up with the color palette myself, obviously based on Mary Wallen's palette in her own colors. But I think it's gonna work for the contrast and for the general vibes. I don't think any color is like standing out as being too muted or too bright. But I cannot cast this on until I finish my other colorwork cowl. Like, there's just no way I would finish the first one otherwise. But now I'm also thinking that the Mary Wallen one could also work so well for the prompt of that yarn show that I was planning to enter the other one in. So I don't know if I said, but I was planning to enter that one as well in the yarn show because we had to do a colorwork neck accessory. or not even, I don't think we had to do a color work one, just a neck accessory. So anyway, yeah, so motivate me to finish my first cowl. I'll hopefully finish it by next time and have cast on the Mario Wallen test net, and if I can show you, I will show you. And I'm just so proud of myself for having that little color palette, and it's just standing out looking at me until I can cast it on. Okay, next, again in the hand-dyed mood, I probably won't cast this on soon because I've got too many garments on the needles right now, but I really love that little swatch, so I'll show you. This is for the Pearl Jacket by Garnot Slicked. It is a broken rib cardigan that is made with one strand of normally DK and one strand of mohair, but I'm doing mine with one strand of fingering and one strand of suri, which is hand-dyed from Zekami that I bought so long ago. I showed you this so many times. It is finally swatched and ready. I am absolutely not meeting gauge for, well actually yeah, no. So I'm not using the yarn recommended in the pattern or the needle size, but I am meeting gauge because I'm so loose, and ribbing is like my worst enemy for looseness. So even though I'm using something that's like should be a DK, I'm ending up with a stitch gauge of like a worsted. So here it is. I love it. I think that the stitch patterns works so well for a hand-dyed, even though like usually hand-dyed stockinette works best. I think that the broken rib stitch works really well. I really like this. I think it's gonna highlight it perfectly. It's gonna be interesting. I'm not gonna have too much like striping or pulling. I've been wanting to use that hand-dyed forever. I think I have finally found the exact stitch pattern that I want, and I just need to cast off a couple things before I can cast this on, but I'm happy I have figured out the needle size. I was hesitating between the sweater and the jacket because they both have the same stitch patterns but they have different gauges. So what I did was that I decided to swatch and let the swatch tell me what I should do. And so yeah, as expected, I wasn't on gauge for the sweater, even though I was using the yarn recommended for the sweater. But then yeah, it worked out that I can do the jacket. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. I really wanted to show it on the podcast again because everything just looks nicer on camera, and I wanted you to feel proud of me for having finally swatched with my hand-dyed that I bought a year ago. My first sweater quantity of hand-dyed and still haven't used it, so come on, chop. And then lastly, I'm thinking of entering the Andrea Mowry March to May knit along, either a sweater or a shawl. The shawl, I could do the birds of a feather shawl that I talked about in my previous video on 2 skein projects for hand-dyed. If you haven't seen it, you can go check it out. I don't know if the direction I'm pointing is actually the direction of the video popping up. One day I will learn. But I think either I'll do the birds of a feather shawl if I find the right yarn and stash, or I will do a sweater from Andrea Mowry. I have 2 on my list. I've got the pink fizz and the pink velvet. I'm leaning towards the pink velvet because it is top down, colorwork yoke, but then stockinette all over, cropped, tight, like neutral ease. I have the yarn in stash, and I don't think it'll be as demanding and complex as the pink fizz would be, even though the pink fizz would look lovely in spring, and is DK, and then the pink velvet is fingering. But the yarn I have in mind for the pink velvet is some Ching fiber, and we've got the yak base and then their melted suri. I think I've shown this before on the podcast. This is a single plied yarn and it's yak, so I'm worried about the durability of that. I know that yak pills badly, and singles as well. And then the melted suri, I'm also kind of toying with the idea of holding it double for like really getting it fluffy and not getting it see-through, and also not wasting yarn, because I don't think you need to use much more than half a skein for my size, but I wouldn't want to use it double. I wouldn't want to hold it double and then halfway through the yoke realizing I'm running out of yarn. So I think I'm leaning towards taking the risk. I always end up with leftovers anyway, so I'm leaning towards holding this double. What I'll do anyway is I'll probably swatch today with this fingering with my 3.25mm needles. She calls for 3.5. I think I'll go down a needle, swatch with that, and then see if I'm on track. And then maybe I'll cast on after finishing something. Maybe the louder vest test knit. When I finish those cables, I'll cast on this color work. So I just wanted to let you know that I was planning to do that. And happy to be using my yarn stash of hand-dyed and my pattern stash of Andrea Mowry patterns that I keep on buying every birthday sale. I have yet to do an Andrea Mowry pattern in my whole life, so this year is gonna happen. So this ended up being a little bit more manic than I thought it would towards the end. I wasn't sure I was gonna have that much to say. I didn't make that much notes, but it just turned out I had a lot I remembered from this jumper, and I feel like I've become a bit more experienced with the podcast at talking about the things that do matter. I try to have a rough idea of I want to talk about the yarn, the designer, the process, and the modifications, and maybe things I've learned or things I would change. I try to keep all of that in mind when I talk, and it turns out that usually there's quite a lot of points to hit in all of these. So, as always, I really hope that you enjoy this type of video and my way of speaking about things. Hopefully, you know, if you're still watching this, is because you do enjoy it. I hope that maybe you learned a thing or two or got inspired to cast on any of these projects. Someone told me that they were working on the Lily backpack, which I thought was a coincidence, because it's not that known a project. It's crochet, first of all. And yeah, it was nice that somebody else out there is sharing that same project at the same time. As you can see, I've been super inspired to use my stash of hand-dyed, especially because as we're going to have more festivals this year, I don't want to be tempted to buy many things if I don't justify it by saying I use my hand-dyed. So if you're not into the hand-dyed yarns yourselves, I hope you can still enjoy the rest of what I talk about in terms of like the pattern or the fit of the items anyways. And if you yourself have some hand-dyed that you don't know what to do with, then I hope that you're inspired by me using it, and maybe you want to use yours too. Apart from that, tiny life update. Life is good. Like I said, I've been feeling a bit under the weather this weekend, but what can you do? I'm just having nice treats at home and taking care of myself. We have a lot of things planned in March. Both Ross and I have some time off that's been long awaited, and we're going to go see Hamilton in a couple of weeks in Edinburgh. We're going to go for a Bob Ross paint and sip class in town, hopefully go to nice restaurants. It's been really enjoyable to plan dates. We're going to go to Liverpool in April. If you have any recommendations for that, I'd love to hear that, by the way. I'll probably ask on Instagram as well. I've been reading a lot and knitting less as a consequence, but it's been nice to divide my time a little bit more evenly with other things than just knitting. I've just been rereading books that I was reading when I was younger as like a comforting thing. The next book I'm going to read today or like this weekend is going to be Twilight. I really want to get back into that. So that's that. And then what else? Oh yeah, I got a haircut. You may have noticed in my last episode. Yeah, it was really straight last episode, and I didn't like it, and I was kind of cringing when I was editing. I really didn't like the way it looked on camera, but thank you for the kind words. And I've decided to try and experiment with like styling it, and obviously here I've got it curled. So yeah, I like it a bit more. It's a bit more like voluminous, and it feels less like helmet of hair or like the coconut guy from Ned's Declassified. That's what I felt like last week. So yeah, experimenting with the haircut. Looking forward to the yarn festivals. I've been buying tickets as and when the festivals have opened up. The purchases of tickets, that's been really nice to plan the year ahead. And I think that's it for the updates. I'm so happy I filmed this podcast. I feel like it was really good to talk about all of what I had on the needles, kind of get an idea of what I want to prioritize and what I want to work on next, and super excited about what they're all looking like right now. I feel like all the color choices and the color works and the cables, I feel like everything is just really beautiful visually and bringing a lot of joy and really colorful, if not a little overwhelming. We're back to having a lot of whips, so not casting on any new things before I finish off some things, but hopefully we'll show you what I eventually cast on next week. So thank you for staying with me here for an hour and a bit. I hope that you enjoyed it, and like I said, if you have any questions about anything or any comments, super happy to read your comments. I try to reply to all of them, and if you haven't already, definitely like this video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe share it on your Instagram story or talk about it with your friends. Bye everyone, happy knitting, and see you all next week.